You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey, Matt.
Andy, what's up, man?
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
The winter is starting to thaw a little bit.
Finally.
You can start hearing the birds chirp a little bit more.
Yep.
The sun's coming up a lot earlier than it did.
Yep.
So that can only mean one thing.
What does that mean?
Spring is on the way.
That is right.
Thank God. It's been a very rough... There we go. It's been a very rough winter, I think, for many parts of the country.
It has been rough.
Extending all the way into April, snow flurries.
Yep.
Especially in the Northeast, this guys got hit really hard.
Yeah. Well, much like, this is a footwear podcast, so like the rest of the industry, we're bitching about the weather. I mean, that's
right.
what it boils down to, right?
Exactly right. Jasmine, how are you?
Great.
Spring's on its way. Are you excited?
Yes. I have yellow nails on. Bring on the sunshine.
There you go.
Nice.
Yes. I'm ready.
And of course, Jasmine is going to do our famous fashion, footwear, and focus segment at the end of the show, and hopefully she'll be focused on some kind of neon or some kind of bright colors for springtime.
Only if that's in, Andy. Only if that's
Only
fashionable.
if that's in, yeah.
Well, I hope it is.
Yeah.
Her nails are in fashion.
You're gonna have to
My
return.
nails are.
He's going to have to return his wardrobe from Old Navy.
But during the spring season, I think it's one of the key seasons for retailers as people, as things heat up a little bit more, people are outside more, people see, I feel like in the wintertime, there were a lot of recluses simply because the weather was so cold. But now people are starting to get out more.
Time to shop, baby.
That's right. So
bust out the wallet.
Gotta clean off that wardrobe. So who do we have today to talk to us a little bit about spring season and retail?
Man, this is such a treat because he is a Virginia boy through and through, and I'm a Virginia boy. Gary Weiner, who is the president and owner of Saxon Shoes, which is a really cool footwear retail in Richmond, Virginia, as well as in Fredericksburg. And Gary's been a longtime friend. And he hosted both myself and Andy down to a store at one point.
That's right.
And sometimes when I'm down there, I secretly sneak in on a weekend because my kids do cheer competitions in the area. So, Gary, we can't thank you enough for being on the show. We love your store, and we love talking to you. And so thanks for being on Shoe In.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt, and look forward to talking to you and Andy and seeing where this conversation goes.
Let's do it. All right. So why don't you give us kind of a rundown, or our listeners a rundown of the Saxon story. Don't bore us with hours and hours of old tales, but why don't you walk us through kind of how you got started, what your vision is, what customer you serve, and so our listeners understand where you're coming from.
Well, I always like to say that we are very fortunate to be in a position that we kind of resemble a Nordstrom's A shopping experience. And we're very proud of that, and we're always glad to be associated with a brand like that. But we started in 1953. My dad sold children's orthopedic shoes. My mother answered the phone, and after about 10 years, they decided maybe they should sell women's. And then my mother had a premonition that maybe we should take credit cards. And that was in the 60s.
Smart
and the rest
lady.
is history. We grew from one employee. After about 7-8 years, my dad was able to hire somebody else, and we've grown to 100-plus people, 45,000 square feet between 2 stores and 2 cities, and we're happy to kind of be a central focus point in the Virginia area.
That's awesome. And for those folks who live in this area or travel through, you'll hear Gary, you'll hear the ads on radio.
That's right.
Yeah,
For
so
Saxon
Gary
Shoes,
does a lot of marketing, which is effective. And Gary, I'll say this, and it's not as an insult at all, but you punch above your weight. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you are well known in the industry. You have 2 locations, but everyone knows you. What's the secret to kind of building that network that you've spent so much time building?
I think I was pretty fortunate. My parents were so involved in the footwear industry. They were friends with everybody they worked with. My dad was about as jovial as they came. My mother, who's still bringing me lunch every few weeks, she was the most organized, well-respected buyer in the industry. People used to shop our store with teams of 10, 15 people to see what we were doing. They would follow her around shoe shows. But most importantly, they were open They were honest. They were fair. And, my mother and my father both taught me that you communicate, you stay in touch when times are great, and you make sure you stay in touch and you communicate when times aren't great. And it kind of holds your place in the industry. So I was fortunate to have some great guidance, people that were involved with the industry in the 60s and 70s. And many of those people who were just salesmen on the road are now contemporaries of mine, presidents of companies. And, I was just fortunate to kind of go through that system.
So what environment are we on? That begs the question, Gary, where are we now? Is it great? Not so great? What's your take on the current retail environment for footwear?
Well, if you're looking at the weather, obviously that's not great. And that is a real, controlling issue when you're trying to sell sandals in the spring or sell boots in the fall. So it's been a tough, I'm in Virginia, so it could have been worse. I could have been in the Northeast, but it's been a very tough March. But every day that the weather has been good, our numbers have been through the roof.
Yeah.
The problem is we haven't had a lot of really great weather days, 80 degrees 2 days, 35 the next night. But we're seeing that funk kind of change, and we're seeing traffic really starting to build over the past 10 days, 2 weeks, whether it's pent-up demand. My vision is that things are going to be pretty solid throughout the spring as long as vendors and retailers can hang in there and, kind of withstand the first quarter lack of business.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Gary. I mean, you have two very large stores at a time when a lot of people are saying we have too much retail space. So maybe share with us a bit about how you see kind of this retail revolution or reshaping that's taking place from a viewpoint of an independent retailer. You have two large stores. How do you look at your floor space and get the most out of it? How do you arrange your stores to keep it lively, keep foot traffic coming in? And then how do you balance all that floor space with e-commerce? How do you see e-commerce fitting in with your business model?
That's a lot of questions, Andy.
Yep,
Let
that's
me see
right.
what I could do here.
That's right.
We position ourselves as your local resource for the widest selection of footwear available. I am not out here to compete with the Zappos of the world. That's not who we are. Mm-hmm. If you want a pair of shoes, if you want to talk to somebody, if you want someone to spend a few minutes with you face to face and bring you multiple pairs and tell you what they're made of and, really give you an education, ask you what you're using your shoes for. At the same time, it is all about the product. So, our focus to grow our business is first and foremost, where's the product? Is it repeat things that people love, as well as what is the new vision 2, 3, 6 months out? We really focus on product because without product, nothing else really matters. And after that, we really take a hard look at our business, and we make sure that we manage it through slow and busy times, and that we are positioned to drive people to our store, because we have taken the last 90 days and knowing that it's a crazy world, we need to make sure that customers like us, that they know us, that they feel there's something happening. So, we've put 90 days into a complete renovation of our flagship store in Richmond.
Wow.
Everything ripped up, ripped out, new carpet, new tile. You walk in, the setting is incredibly warm. We took walls out. We opened the store up. We changed some color schemes. So when people are walking in, they're feeling a little different setting at Saxon. And then, we made a sincere effort to really shop all the markets and bring in a half a dozen. Well, we have 75 brands, but a half a dozen, 10 new brands to our stores that most people have never heard of. And they're all spectacular, and they kind of fit the kind of growth look that we want, which is somewhat progressive, not space age, but evolution of things we know that work. So we really focus on our store, our product, our people, our setting, and then we throw in the relationships into the community and try and endear people to our business so they want to shop with us because of who we are, not necessarily because of what we have.
Right. And it sounds like, congratulations on all the growth you've had over these many years, but you said you have around 100 employees. So tell us a little bit about the training process and the hiring process. What kind of people are you looking for? Who's successful in your store in sales? Is someone that's warm and friendly? And then how do you, you said product is kind of king in this environment, making sure you have the right product. So how do you guys communicate with the salesman on the floor about new product coming in, these new brands? How do you help them sell those to customers coming in? What kind of process do you use to educate and make sure that they're communicating properly to your customer?
There's a lot of ways that we accomplish that. Because we have 2 stores and our offices are in one of the big stores, we make sure that we bring staff back to see brands that we're looking at that might be new, or even brands that we've carried, just to get their opinion. Number one, it makes our staff buy into the system. It also gives them the knowledge going forward of what's coming in. When we go to trade shows, we make sure we bring back a lot of pictures and detail sheets, and we share that with, a half a dozen, 10 different salespeople around the store, because, again, we want them to be part of the organization, not just a salesperson, not just a buyer. With the people that we hire, we typically bring them in. They would have a 2 to 4 hour initial orientation, followed by training and mirroring with established salespeople who understand that their focus is to make that new person as good as possible, because that new person will be taking care of customers that might come back in looking for any of our staff.
Right.
So we really go after it with established people who we know how to train, and we bring brand information. We use some of the technology and some of the assets online to have them go and do their own homework. But it's all about knowledge. It's all about, who are you inside? Because our number one hiring focus is, how do you present yourself?
Wow.
How do you present yourself? Are you a genuinely happy person that would like to make somebody else feel good? And if we sense that, we can teach you anything in the world about selling shoes.
Yeah. That, it's somewhat simplistic and common sense, but there's so many of us have experiences now in retail where we say, why bother? I should just go online because of how I was mistreated. Andy has a famous story where the woman at the register asked him to bag his own stuff. So,
that was lovely.
That was lovely. So I think it's simple, but it's so core to why someone comes back to a store. Gary, let me ask you, just off the top of your head, what are some of those 10 brands that are new that you guys have brought in to help kind of complement your other portfolio of brands that you sell?
Well, there's no trade secrets out there, but some of my very good friends in retail, we shop a lot of shows. They attend MECAM. I try and get there when I can. But there's brands out there, Sabatini, small brand out of Spain, Worth out of Brazil. We've done some shoes out of Italy. We kind of resource from a bunch of different places, and we try and look at where success has been in branded footwear and extrapolate that maybe to a little up and over, so that the shoes, have a little edgier feel to what's been successful.
Yeah.
And at the same time, and I hope that every independent retailer is looking at it this way, we're looking at trying to do shoes at 65 to 75 points under this umbrella, as opposed to the traditional, 50, 55 that you might be getting from established vendors that do have stock.
Yeah.
And they do support you, and they do have advertising. But we have to find those high-margin goods to really move the needle in this environment. Special goods, small brands, high margin.
Yeah, and just some of those brands you listed, to give access to those brands to a consumer base in a mid-sized city in the U.S., it just seems like it's, you're importing in quality, and you're importing in kind of a unique product that you may not be able to find elsewhere.
Customers walk in, and they look at the established brands that they know and love. They're all over them. And then they see these 4, 5, 8 new brands scattered around, new arrival signs. And they're like, first question is, hey, what are these? Well, there's the conversation. There's your engagement.
Yeah.
There's your relationship. And we're off to the races. And they may or may not buy that particular item, but we're pretty sure that those things are going to go because, again, we're buying based off success, extrapolated once up, once over.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Hey, Gary, how are you? Matt mentioned the radio ads that Matt and I also hear very often. But what ways are you marketing and talking to consumers in the greater Richmond area about, new product offerings, new sales, things like that? What kind of mix of marketing are you using? Is it online? Are you using direct mail or, obviously the radio? What kind of channels do you think really work?
The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah,
all of the above. And every one of those channels works, or they wouldn't be around.
Right.
So we utilize multi-channel. We do like to focus on reach and frequency. We want to touch people as many ways as possible, as many times as possible. I do like broadcast in particular, meaning TV. We do network. We do some cable. I do radio, in and out of radio, depending on the time of year. I like electronic billboards. Of course, we're all over digital and social, email campaigns, Facebook, Pinterest. We don't miss many, but it really revolves around our message. And, and if the wrong message in the right medium is a bad message.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time on that, and we make sure that we deliver the right message that we think will perk a consumer's ear and drive them towards our business.
Let me ask you about in-store experience. You said you just completely renovated your store. What kind of technologies do you see really working in retail environment today in brick and mortar? We hear a lot about digital screens and things like that, and it goes all the way up to like VR headsets and all these sorts of things. It's really hard to separate fact from fiction. We know that all the retailers have limited budget to spend on technologies to create experience. So what do you see working in stores that consumers interact with? And then maybe what are you using in the back end operation to help manage inventory or just kind of stay on top of what's happening with your business?
Well, if we were really pushing far forward, we'd be all over augmented reality.
Right.
We'd be shopping with glasses,
Right.
and we wouldn't even need to move. You just sit there, and we would service you. But that's not who we are. That's
Right.
not what we're trying to be. Our target customer is, not the youngest. Disposable income. Female oriented. We really focus on our demographics. And we want to make the shopping experience on the floor as warm, as comfortable, as inviting as possible. There are some screens, but we don't want to be a computer store. We want to be a shoe store that takes care of you. Now, when our staff hits the stock room, I'm fortunate enough to have a son who is pretty incredible with technology. We have monitors in our stock rooms for our staff. They can see what's in a store. They can see what's in a brand. Many times they can even check what's on order, and they can talk to customers very knowledgeably. So we utilize a lot of technology in the back. Our inventory systems, our buyers are monitoring daily, weekly, hot sellers, cold sellers. How can we manage our inventory better to be more in with the right shoes and out of the bad shoes? And that's where the vendor relationships really help us.
I think that's brilliant because I think so many times people are buying technology because it's technology and they want to stay ahead. But technology is only useful if it's actually can be used, And so it's great that you guys have back end stuff that your whole staff can use and it's not just centralized. I think some people may centralize that to where they're making decisions at a top level, but when you're actually able to utilize systems that tell everybody on your floor what's happening and what's available, so they can make sure that the customer gets what they want and has answers, I think that's great.
Gary, let me ask you this: as we kind of think, we think of the future for Saxon Shoes. You talked about your son. One of the things I think that independent retailers in particular should be and are most concerned with is succession and how do they pass on the business to the next generation and ensure that it continues on. Tell us about your family dynamic, how many people in your family are involved in the business, how you view succession, so that because we have a number of independent retailers who listen to this program, help guide them through how you think about it when it comes to ensuring that the Saxon retail store and the name continues on forevermore.
Well, that's a tough forward question in this environment. So we talk succession. I have 3 kids, 2 in the business, and it's a tough conversation because love and business have to be separated like church and state. So do we love our business? Absolutely. Do we love our name? Do we love our people? Absolutely. But it is a business. And, my focus is to do as well in business as possible.
Yeah.
To support my family, our staff, and everybody in the community. So, however that kind of turns out over the next, 1 to 3, 1 to 5 years, we'll see. I'm an aggressive guy. I'm always looking to do something possibly bigger and better. And, footwear is something I have a pretty deep knowledge about. So, we talk about it. We don't have any decisions as long as Dad's still moving and shaking. We don't have to worry about it just yet, even though we do have these conversations on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
I think I think we got time for one more question before we flip it to Jasmine. And it's just, I love Gary and I love talking to Gary and I love his insights and the knowledge he has and all the years of experience. So Gary, this is the soapbox question, basically, where you can stand up on your soapbox and make some statement about whatever you want. Basically, what I'm really interested in is in a really tough retail environment across the country for many, many people. What's the message that you tell brands and vendors that you work with? What can they do to help you become a better retailer? Are there any issues or challenges that you're looking at and you're really saying, gosh, we could really use more help in these areas from our partners? Or is there something in particular you're thinking about in your business that you just want to sound awful? And I'll just give you the floor, Gary. Tell us.
With respect to vendors, I'd have to say that this footwear community, and I've been involved with a lot of businesses, footwear all my life, but a lot of industries, this community is about as strong and about as solid as there is out there. Our major vendors, some of the smaller vendors, as long as a retailer like me, as long as we are in touch, as long as we're not hard to find when times are tough, as long as we're just not communicating when times are great, we have a solid community. I think if vendors can just think out a little further about their distribution and the brand presentation and how they are going direct to consumer, possibly at the expense of independents and other outlets, without notice to the retailer of what's upcoming in terms of a sale or a promotion, and catching retailers off guard when a customer comes in and says, hey, look at this sale on this brand. Why aren't you having it? Well, we didn't really know about it. So I just think the communication is absolutely both ways. Right. And the more you do, the more that's available. Vendors have to sell shoes the same as retailers. So, how do we work together to make sure that we all maximize and everybody comes out okay?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like that communication, no matter the season, no matter the structure of the business, is always in fashion. And so with that, I think we want to bring in Jasmine Pendergrass. What's up, Jasmine?
Hi, guys.
Bring her back in to talk about, to unveil her world-famous fashion, footwear, and focus segment. So, Jasmine, what's on your mind when it comes to fashion?
Okay, so Coachella just happened, and it happens every year during the springtime, and it's besides the music and the incredible performance by Beyonce herself, fashion was the next big thing going on the yard. So I was just looking at what everybody was wearing, and boots were everybody was wearing, from girls to guys, and it looks like because spring has kind of taken its time getting here, I think boots are going to continue for the spring until it really heats up. Yeah. White boots were really popular. White combat boots were like your classic Doc Martens or something like that. Of course, there's the high-end ones that people were wearing, but that was really, really popular. Actually, Rihanna came out in an outfit that were thigh-high UGG boots,
What?
which I didn't even think were possible or anybody was ever even thinking about making. Like, first of all, Uggs as heels and then Uggs as thigh-highs are just, out of this world for me.
Warm. It sounds very warm.
It's super warm, but
she's skinny. She's the first one to go when the
you
the
saw her
plate
front.
comes.
Yep.
Yeah, she turned down my selfie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rihanna.
But yeah, we'll need to keep a little bit warm, until it starts to heat up. So boots are really popular right now. I wouldn't be surprised if, people weren't still investing in that when they're going to stores. And,
You said the white in particular. Like we've seen a trend of white shoes for a while.
Sneakers.
Do you think that's going to continue?
Yeah, for sure.
Gary, what are you seeing in your stores? Are you guys stocking up on a lot of kind of white sneakers or white shoes that people are still into?
Sneakers are definitely still happening. Casual performance, but really casual looks. The colors, white really seems to be the color. White followed closely by gray.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
I have both pair in my closet right now.
Of course she does.
new pairs. So.
We'd expect nothing less, Jasmine.
Exactly.
What else? Anything else out there that you see? Or
No, that was mostly like the consensus.
That's
if you
interesting.
looked, of course, there was a lot of debuts.
What happened to
there,
neon?
but
I thought we were going to go neon.
No, just
Neon's
white,
out, brother.
white.
Neon Dion is always in, but apparently not as a shoe, right?
White and black. Yeah,
White.
those were no bright colors really.
That's
which is
interesting.
surprising.
Maybe
Well-
Gary can do a pop-up Saxon at the next Coachella and just see what's going on out there, huh?
Well, I will tell you, it's funny you ask. I'm looking at buying a little bread step van that we can take from place to place with neon signs and take the appropriate product for the right time. Like if it's raining, we show up with Hunter. If it's
Wow.
snowing, we show up with Ugg.
I love it.
So
That's an awesome
where's Coachella?
idea.
Where's the next Coachella? We'll be there.
Yeah, so maybe Andy and I drive it?
Yeah.
We'll drive.
I got a DSL. I also have a Fort driver's license just in case you want me to move a lot of product in the back end, Gary.
With pop-up
Whatever
shops
you
being
need.
so popular, that's an awesome idea.
Well, I think it's mobile pop-up, right?
Yeah,
So
but
Gary
that's
can hop
the-
in and
It's like
That's
the
what
next
we're
level.
looking at. It's basically a mobile pop-up based
Yeah.
on the
We could
setting
al-
that's going on.
we could
That's
also do a
brilliant.
Blues Brothers where we put on the the loudspeaker on top and talk about Saxon shoes and drive around Richmond
Oh,
for you,
Andy, I
Gary.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
He doesn't want to lose customers.
Oh, Gary, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks,
thank you very
Gary.
much for all you do for our industry and the engagement and the voice you lead. You lend out there to folks to share what's happening in your stores. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
And I appreciate what you guys do for us. Thank you so much.
All right, Gary. Folks, this is Shoe and Show. You can find us on the internet, shoeandshow.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're always looking for input on guests, topics that you want to hear from. We try to give a lot of balance out there to people who are making shoes, people selling shoes, people designing shoes. So each week we try to have a new person come on and talk a little bit about what they see happening in our industry. And we appreciate folks like Gary taking the time to join us and for the good work that they're doing. As always, for Matt, for Jasmine, this is Andy. Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.